What if I told you that every single drop of oil India imports arrives on a ship that India doesn't own? That's not a minor detail. That's a structural vulnerability. And India just decided to do something about it. Here's the situation. India imports a massive chunk of its energy, crude oil, LPG, LNG, and almost all of it travels on foreign-owned ships, which means every time there's a geopolitical shock, a war in the Middle East, a sanctions standoff, a port blockade, India is basically at the mercy of foreign shipping companies who can charge whatever they want. You're stuck. You need the oil. You pay the price. That's the problem this policy is trying to fix. So what's the plan? The government has approved 51,383 crore rupees. That's roughly $6.2 billion. In FY27 alone, to acquire 62 new ships, adding 2.85 million gross tonnage to India's fleet. Gross tonnage, by the way, is just a measure of how much a ship can carry. Think of it as the total cargo muscle of the fleet. And look at that number on screen, 51,383 crore rupees in a single financial year. That's not a pilot project. That's a statement. But the long-term picture is even bigger. The target is 437 vessels by FY42, which is less than 18 years from now. Think of it this way. India is done renting trucks. It's buying its own fleet. Right now, every time we move oil or gas, we're paying rent to someone else. Owning the ships means controlling the cost, the route, and the timeline. The vehicles doing the heavy lifting here are a joint venture between Shipping Corporation of India, India's largest state-owned shipping company, and oil and gas PSUs like ONGC and GAIL. And separately, ONGC has already floated tenders for 25 vessels on its own. The fleet isn't just tankers either. We're talking crude carriers, LPG and LNG ships, container vessels, green tugs for harbors, and even ammonia carriers for future green energy. This is India making a 15-year bet on energy sovereignty. And less dependence on foreign ships eventually means more control over import costs, which feeds directly into a more stable rupee and a healthier trade deficit for the whole economy. So that's the big picture. What India is building and why. But a plan this massive doesn't just happen. Next up, we're getting into the economics of how this actually gets funded, and what it means for the companies involved, so the strategic case is clear. But here's the question investors and business owners actually care about. Who walks away richer and who quietly picks up the bill? The biggest winners are domestic shipyards. Specifically Cochin Shipyard, Mazagon Dock, and L&T Shipbuilding. And they're not just getting a shot at the contract. They're getting something better. The government has handed them a right of first refusal, or ROFR. Think of it like your local vendor getting the first look at a cheaper foreign quote before you even consider going abroad. If they can match it, the order stays in India. Full stop. Now pair that with the sheer scale of execution. Orders like this run 5 to 10 years, which means revenue visibility well into the 2030s. That's not a quarterly bump. That's a decade of pipeline. And the ripple doesn't stop at the shipyard gate. Every hull needs thick plate steel. Enter SAIL and JSW Steel, who are looking at 5 to 10 years of sustained, predictable demand. Add equipment suppliers like Kirloskar Brothers into the mix, and you've got a classic multiplier effect firing across the industrial ecosystem. One big order, many quiet winners. But, and this is the part most headlines skip, 51,383 crore rupees has to come from somewhere. That kind of fiscal outlay adds to government borrowing, which puts upward pressure on the 10-year GSEC yield, essentially the benchmark bond rate. When that rises, borrowing gets more expensive economy-wide, private credit tightens. And if you're a small business owner trying to get a loan, you might feel that squeeze without ever hearing the word shipyard. Great for industrial India, not a free lunch for the rest of it. So we know who wins and who pays. Next. Does this actually move the needle on India's long-term economic ambitions, or is it just a very expensive short-term fix? But here's where it gets complicated, because this is not a clean, frictionless win. There are real trade-offs baked into this policy, and they matter. Start with the right of first refusal mechanism. Sounds great on paper, right? Domestic yards get first dibs. Except Indian shipyards are generally more expensive and slower than South Korean or Chinese yards, who basically run global shipbuilding. So if a domestic yard can't match the lowest global bid, the government has to choose, pay a premium, which means higher cost to the taxpayer, or wait longer, which delays the entire fleet expansion and chips away at the energy security goal. That's your ROFR trade-off, and it's not a small one. Then layer on the fact that for highly specialized vessels like VLGCs, very large gas carriers, the massive ships that move LPG in bulk, India may simply have to source from abroad in the near term under a phased approach, because domestic capacity just isn't there yet. Think of it like learning to cook biryani. You're still ordering from the restaurant while you perfect your own recipe. You get the food, but you're still paying someone else. The goal is to eventually make it yourself. Cheaper, faster, on your own terms. So, what should you actually watch over the next 12 to 24 months? Will Cochin Shipyard or Mazagon Dock announce serious capacity expansions to absorb this order volume? Will ONGC's 25 vessel tenders land with domestic yards or quietly trigger international bids? And how does the government manage the fiscal math without crowding out private credit? Long term, if this plays out. And that, if it's doing a lot of work. India's freight costs on energy imports could fall meaningfully, reducing exposure to global shipping rate swings, stabilizing the trade deficit, and over time, supporting a stronger rupee. Good for every importer, good for every business pricing in dollars. The bottom line? This is a 15-year infrastructure bet. Short-term winners are obvious. Shipyards, steel, SCI. The long-term prize is energy sovereignty. But execution risk is very real, and the cost of capital impact is something every business owner should keep on their radar in the quarters ahead. Follow us for more updates like this. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and X.